Since the release of this groundbreaking paper in 2022, we finally have answers to optimizing your strength training if you want to run better race times. I can also tell you what gym routines you might be doing that's a waste of time. Take Cody for example, who is training for a marathon and striving for a personal best. He's no dummy and knows that strength training will help achieve this goal. But with so many exercises to choose from, it's hard to know which ones to pick. Nonetheless, he quickly searches online for exercises and starts single leg calf raises, planks, wall sits, clamshells, and glute bridges. Unfortunately, this is a common mistake runners make. It goes against conventional thinking, but runners should be adopting heavy resistance training rather than lighter, high rep or isometric exercises. In other words, swapping out those TheraBands and replacing them with dumbbells, barbells, and kettlebells. This approach brings a common fear that runners have, and that is putting on too much muscle if they start with heavy strength training. Let's bust this myth right now. It is extremely difficult to put on excess muscle, especially if the majority of your week is cardio focused. Sure, you might put on a couple of pounds here and there of muscle, but this would only be enough to enhance your running capabilities. To put on more muscle than this would require strength training to look completely different. Let's compare your workouts to that of, say, a bodybuilder. As you can see here, diet has a lot to do with putting on weight, but also the volume of gym and the inclusion of cardio workouts. Fortunately, Cody had this research paper handy and goes back to the drawing board, and with this new knowledge has implemented squats, double leg calf raises, lunges, and deadlifts. Even though the paper calls for heavy loads, Cody makes a sensible decision of starting lighter to learn the movements correctly and allow his body to adapt. Let's go through each exercise so Cody and you Run Smarter scholars can learn the basics. But also at the end of this video, I'll cover a common occurrence that runners can't seem to get a grip of. There's a little hint there of what that actually might be. And this common occurrence really hinders someone's ability to progress. Back to the basics, starting with the squat. Start with dumbbells by your shoulders or by your side. Separate your legs slightly wider than hip width and turn out the feet slightly. Keep your chest up and squat down to a depth that is natural for you. I'll talk about sets and reps shortly. Next, we have a forward lunge. With your weights by your side, step forward and touch your knee to the floor. Come back up to the starting position and again repeat on the opposite side. Similar to before, we want to keep the chest nice and upright. Each step of the lunge will be slightly different per rep, which is fine, but you want to make sure that you have control the entire time. For calf strengthening, my favorite is the double leg bent knee calf raise. With holding onto dumbbells at the front and the toes slightly elevated, perform a calf raise while keeping the knees slightly bent. Some common mistakes are straightening the legs at the top of the movement or the heels raising without the entire body moving upwards. Lastly, the most underappreciated but also the trickiest to master is the deadlift. With the dumbbells out front, slide them down your thighs and down your shins, keeping your shins vertical and your arms vertical. Lower down as far as you can, provided that form is maintained. Keep in mind that the back needs to remain relatively flat. Common errors are shins coming forward, the lower back arching or flexing, and not bringing the chest up over the knees. For beginners, all of these exercises should start with 3 sets of 10. But as you start to become more confident and the body starts to adapt to heavier weight, you can hover around a rep range of 6 to 10. For example, you can progress in this fashion and start with 3 sets of 10 before increasing the weight and dropping down to 3 sets of 6. Once you have progressed back up to 10, repeat the process but with heavier weights. Cody took on this advice and continued strength training twice a week and was progressing nicely. But at week 3, he started noticing some aches and pains across his body. For example, his lunges were giving him some knee soreness and the squats were starting to irritate his lower back. If this happens to you, there are some short-term modifications you can make before resuming the normal programming. 1, you can reduce the weight of the exercise, and 2, you can reduce the range of motion. For example, putting something under your knee for lunging. It might also be helpful to have a professional just quickly glance over your technique just to make sure everything's okay. Cody also started to get worried about DOMS, or delayed onset muscle soreness, since he's now lifting heavy weights. After all, remember, this is the middle of his marathon training, and he didn't want muscle soreness impeding on the running itself. This is another common and valid worry for runners, but DOMS is a necessary process for you to get stronger. If you aren't sure if it's DOMS or an injury, this video will tell you everything you need to know. But for now, DOMS should only last 24 to 48 hours, so you can strategically place strength training throughout the week so that your running isn't impeded. Here is an example of what that looks like. But also keep in mind that research says that if you do have DOMS, it doesn't affect your running performance when you run the next day, and it doesn't increase your risk of injury. So I just usually suggest that someone just starts off with a slow jog before getting into their workout. Okay, 10 weeks has passed, and Cody is seeing great improvement in his performance. This actual 10 weeks fits the time frame of this paper perfectly and suggests that runners need to strength train for greater than 10 weeks for superior results. In this time, the weights have started to pick up, so Cody has switched to using a barbell for his squats, deadlifts, and calf raises. His rep range is still hovering around 6 to 8 per set, meaning that the weight is so heavy that the exercise is starting to become really challenging by the end of this set. But interestingly, this paper concluded that heavier weights, say doing exercises less than a 4 RM, seems to correlate to better running performance. So that's really heavy stuff. So keep this in mind, but a word of warning, lifting weights this heavy requires months and sometimes years of practice. So if you aren't at this level of expertise, keep the rep range around 6 to 10. You can still use this rep range and reap the running benefits, but it can lower your risk of injury in the gym. It was just 4 weeks before Cody's marathon, and he wanted to progress his strength to squeeze out every little bit of potential. But his grip strength was really starting to limit the amount of weight he could hold on to. This is that common hurdle that I mentioned earlier and halts runners from progressing in the gym. But here's what you can do. Firstly, make sure you aren't over gripping that bar. Lock the thumb in place and make sure your hands and forearms are as relaxed as possible and doing the bare minimum to safely hold onto the bar. You might also find that some gym gloves are helpful. Secondly, it's a big common mistake, but you need to take longer breaks in between your sets. I see this time and time again. Runners go into the gym and they spend 30 to 60 seconds in between sets and wondering why their grip strength is failing by the end of their 3rd set. Spend at the very least 2 minutes in between sets for heavy exercises. I sometimes recommend up to 5 minutes of rest. And to save time in the gym, I recommend incorporating supersets. For example, doing 1 set of your deadlifts, then doing an upper body exercise and letting the grip strength kind of recover before returning back to your 2nd set of deadlifts. While this paper is a systematic review, it just gives a vague conclusion when compiling dozens of papers. But this next paper is a randomized control trial giving you the exact sets, reps, exercises, and even rest periods in between your sets, and has shown to improve your running performance by 4%. To put that into context, the great Super Shoes claim to improve your running performance by just 3%. To see what exercises they tested, check out this video.